Lots to be positive about on Saturday. A loss is a loss, but what can we take away from a close defeat to SMU?
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is AJ Black. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider, and this is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. Thank you all for listening to today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. So BC, they lose by 10 to SMU. Should have been just 3, but they got that touchdown at the end. 38-23, 38-28, excuse me. Grayson James's debut against ACC-level opponents. I've seen a whole bunch of people saying it was his debut, which is not right. But we're going to talk about what we saw today on Saturday, and we're going to talk about it with Mitchell Wolf. Mitchell Wolf of Eagle Insider. Mitch, how's it going?
Doing well, considering the circumstances of this game. You know, obviously we thought that BC would have a tough time. They played better than we expected, I would say. But ultimately it wasn't enough. And ironically, the final score ended up being pretty close to what we predicted.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get into some of the big topics. If you want the full recap of like the ups and downs of that game, you can find it in the podcast feed. I did something on Saturday right after the game. But let's get into some of the big topics of the game. And obviously, topic number one is going to be the play of quarterback one, Grayson James. Lots of positivity amongst BC fans. There were actually some people texting me saying I was too hard on him after Saturday's game. Mitch, what did you see from Grayson, and how did you evaluate his performance?
So I put my thoughts on this on Twitter, but I'll say it again here. I thought Grayson James played better than I expected for the most part. I think it took him a little while to get going. Those first few drives were pretty rough. He didn't ask him to do a lot. He missed some easy throws. He had some throws that were really questionable in terms of making them possible interceptions. But once you got into the second quarter, into the third quarter, he really started to find a groove. You saw him making some really nice throws deep over the middle. I saw him unlock the offense a little bit with some running, which was good, running physically as well. But ultimately, there were a few times where you needed him to make a big play, and it didn't happen. And the two times that I'm thinking of are the drive right before halftime, where BC gets the interception from Carter Davis. BC gets the ball thanks to a penalty at like the 20 or 15, and he throws an interception. Next play, SMU reels off a big run, turns that into a field goal. And, I think at biggest, that's a 10-point swing away from BC. And final score, that's a tie game. If you want to, I would throw out that last touchdown because it was kind of a weird fluky play. That changes the game hugely in every way. So that's a big one. And then the final drive of the game for BC, the penultimate drive for them, that they had a last second chance at the very end. But that drive where, and we'll talk about this a little bit, like the play calling was a little weird where they kind of ran the ball and then they're like, okay, now we got to pass. And, he takes a scramble sack where he scrambles ahead, gets a yard, throws it away the next play, and then 2 sacks, and the game is, for all intents and purposes, over. That's where you got him. Those are the money downs. That's where you have to make a difference, and he wasn't able to do that. Again, some very positive things. Again, unlocking the quick game with the offense. He made some plays off schedule, which was good to see. So you like to see all that, but ultimately, it felt pretty similar to a average Thomas Castellanos game, in my opinion, in terms of where you see some great flashes, some good plays, but there's some, boneheaded mistakes. And then there's, plays where it's like, there are plays you have to make that you're leaving on the table.
What were some of the best moments from him? Like, can you think of we're going to talk about that halftime, right before halftime turnover. Like, what was like a play or two that really stood out for you positively?
So there was one, and I don't exactly remember. I know it was in the first half, but there was a play where he threw a deep in route to, I'm pretty sure I think it was Lewis Bond actually, on a deep in cut. That was a great one. He had, I think, 2 to Reed Harris. One was a more traditional dig route. The other one was more of a crossing route across the field. Those were great throws. The touchdown throw to Kamari Morales was awesome. Hit him right up the seam for a touchdown. That was great. again, like, and this was maybe where I hadn't really seen this on tape, and I wasn't sure it was going to be available. But his ability to kind of make more throws when the play was breaking down, and I think that's where kind of his height comes in, where he can kind of see those check downs into the flat, and instead of when you talk about Castellanos, like the height of his powers, those plays are where he runs around and gets escapes and makes it a run play. And then for James, it's a check down to the flat. And a few times he found the running back outside, throws it out there, and that turns into a first down as opposed to an incompletion or a sack. So those were some good plays. And those are the kind of plays that keeps drive alive. And the fourth down near the red zone where he found Kamari Morales again on kind of a, I think Louis Riddick called it a seven stop route where he like runs like he's going to run a corner route, but then turns it into a curl route and just sits down right there. That was a good throw. But again, a lot of plays on left out in the field. Like there were the few that I can think of. There were 2 times where he got bailed out by defensive pass interference on fourth down. There was another fourth down that he failed to convert where he kind of just threw it in coverage. It got tipped. The fourth down that got dropped by Trayshawn Ward, most of the blame falls on Trayshawn Ward there. Absolutely, you got to catch that ball. If James throws that, James could have thrown a better ball, and then it might have been easier to catch. So that I think he owns a little bit of blame there. There was the play where he threw it like as high as possible for Kamari Morales on the sideline, and ended up being a legal touching penalty, I think. So, again, this is where I'm like, I think he played well. I think he played better than I expected, but I don't think he is necessarily like the immediate savior where it's like, oh, the offense was automatically fixed. Everything is great. Like this is, he should have been starting the whole season. I just don't think that that's the case. I think that had that been the case, maybe you flip the result of the Virginia game because that game was so weird and came down to really those 2 turnovers near the end. But I don't think he's certainly not elevating the rest of the team to the point where they could, flip the result of the Virginia Tech game. I think Louisville was, again, kind of a weird game where, I talked about Thomas Castellanos didn't turn the ball over in that game at all. Maybe Grayson James does. It's if ifs and buts weren't candy, and that's what all of it had. Merry Christmas. So I don't really want to get into all that because especially now that Castellanos is gone, it doesn't really matter anymore. So yeah, I think there's good things to take away, but there's also some things that like, let's be realistic about this. And, BC still has other things to clean up, and Grayson James could still stand to play better.
Now, my big question is, I would my takeaway right now is that at least this Grayson James is an improvement over the broken Thomas Castellanos.
Yes, unquestionably.
And I think that I imagine that if he was still here, we can't again, ifs and buts, whatever. You can't say that though. We don't know, but we have Grayson James in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So my big question now is, does this put BC in a position to win against UNC and Pitt?
I absolutely think it does. Watching UNC, getting ready for that game, I think they're absolutely gettable. They've been playing better as of late. Excuse me, getting edge rusher Kyman Rucker back, that was huge for them. So they're playing a little better, but I think that they're structured a little, not completely the same, but they have some of the similarities to like an SMU defense where I think BC could have some success there. And again, BC is playing a little better, and Pitt is kind of spiraling, especially I would say more so on their offensive side of the ball, where now they have a backup quarterback. Their offensive line is having a lot of injuries. But yeah, I think that obviously this version of Grayson James, what we have now, is better than obviously the Thomas Castellanos we saw in the Syracuse game, and probably better than the one we saw in the Louisville and Virginia Tech games. I know I said I wouldn't flip the result, but based on the fact that Castellanos was basically playing worse in every game and still making these mistakes, now we're at a point where what Grayson James is now is better than that version of Thomas Castellanos.
All right, in a moment, I want to talk to Mitch about the defense because they got banged up pretty bad, and they let up 38 points. But again, we're playing with the power of positivity here. There's some positive takeaways from that. We'll talk about the ups and downs of the BC defense in just a moment. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us. The fans who are just first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. If you Boston College fans, you need your fuel for the week. I think it's important. They get 2 more games, bowl eligibility on the line. This is going to get you going for it. get you there at noon against the Tar Heels team I don't think BC's beaten in a while. So 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled through the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. And if you want to get more Tar Heel news, check out Locked on Tar Heels with Isaac, their host. He's a great guy. He talks a lot about basketball, but he also talks football too. So if you want to get yourself ready, check out Locked on Tar Heels on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, the defense, as Bill O'Brien said after the game, they didn't stop them ever, is what Bill said. And the only reason that that SMU didn't score points on every drive was self-inflicted wounds, is basically what he said. Mitch, this defense definitely had better games, but what were some of your takeaways from them?
I think the first thing we have to talk about is the fact that Boston College is now missing both of their top cornerbacks. They were missing 2 of their top 3 linebackers, and I think then we saw they had to keep going down the depth chart at those 2 positions. We've already talked about how outside of Donovan Ezaraku and Cam Horsley, this defensive line is quite suspect. And in the rest of the defensive backfield, they're playing Omar Thornton and Ash McShane a lot, who are both true freshmen. So with that in mind, this unit is going to have they're going to have some busts. They're going to make some mistakes. They're going to have some bad plays. Furthermore, they're playing against a top 15 team in the country who has an excellent offense that is exceptionally dynamic in both the run and the pass game, with a mobile quarterback that allows you to unlock the entire playbook. So allowing 38 points isn't good, but we have to manage expectations a bit here. And with that in mind, I thought that there were times where they made enough plays to give the offense a chance, again, to keep this close to the point where had the offense made some more plays and held up their end of the bargain, BC could be walking away with the win here. Again, the problem is in this game, you have only 1 turnover, which again, then BC wasn't able to capitalize on, and you don't have any sacks. I think you might have 1 play where Jennings was scrambling and then got tackled for 1 yard or no gain. So it's you're quibbling at that point. But they weren't successful enough. They allowed too many explosive plays. Obviously, the big run at the end of the first half that allowed them to get in field goal range and then kick a field goal. That's a huge factor in this game. And they were able to get some pressure on Kevin Jennings. Obviously, their SMU is pretty good at getting the ball. Well, they're decent at getting the ball out quickly with RPOs and screens. But a lot of times they also miss sacks, and Donovan Ezaraku was guilty of that. We saw a bunch of other players miss sacks, and they were able to turn those into at least non-negative plays. And again, the defense is trying stuff. Like, they're not just staying with the same things and hoping they work. Like, they're trying different coverages, trying different fronts, moving guys around, putting in different players. We saw so we're seeing all that. And aside from all that, it was awesome to see linebacker Bryce Steele get back on the field. We saw him earlier in the season a bit in relief duty against Duquesne. Like, oh, that's nice. And I think he played some special teams here and there. But he was playing legitimate, meaningful snaps in this game. And those who don't know, Bryce Steele missed all of last year with leukemia. And he's back this year. And Bill O'Brien had said that he was probably going to miss the entire season. He was still kind of coming back from that. But he was on the field in this game playing meaningful snaps and made some meaningful plays. So that was really awesome to see. And, Bryce Steele's a guy that I liked a lot of his positive flashes in 2022, was hoping that he'd be able to build on that. Obviously misses 2023. So that kind of hampers his development. So you're hoping that, he can get back on the field in these few games and then use that as a launching point to maybe continue developing into the next year. And then, this is a pretty thin linebacker group going forward. So especially, and even just this year with Owen McGowan being in now off the season, Cam Arnold still probably being day-to-day. Don't know if we're going to honestly see him play anymore. But if he's going to be a meaningful player, that's awesome to see that he's able to get back in football if that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, I thought so too. You mentioned that Bill said that he was going to be out. I was surprised to see him out there, and that was great.
I had to do multiple corrections on Twitter. I was like, I think that's Bryce Steele, and then Siona Hala came out, and they both had the cowboy collar thing under their jersey and shoulder pads. I was like, okay, so that's Siona Hala, and then I was like, wait, no, that is Bryce Steele. He is out there.
Yeah, it was a cool moment, and glad to see that he was able to get back on the field. Now, the secondary, I thought, it's great to see them just battling. Watching SMU's offense, before we got into this game, all the talk was about how fast they were, but when you watch them play,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
see what the difference the mud made last year at the
Yeah,
Fenway Bowl
exactly.
because they are electric.
even
Like,
even just Jennings, like, and that even
yep,
kind of surprised me about how mobile and electric he was. Like, because BC would like get some pressure and he would spin out of it and make a throw downfield. It's like, geez, okay, like this team is just more talented than what they're doing. And like, very tough game for Ashton McShane, true freshman cornerback, and you know SMU went after him a lot, and it's just a rough day for a true freshman.
yeah, I would say so. How would you kind of grade out the defense in this game?
I feel like it's hard to give them anything better than like a C minus. Like,
Yeah,
again, it's even if you take away the last touchdown, which I think would be fair to do. You allowed 31 points. SMU again moved the ball up and down the field almost at will. Looking at their drives, missed field goal, touchdown, interception, field goal, touchdown, field goal, punt, touchdown. So you got some stops at the end, and that was huge because that's BC was kind of playing well and mounting a comeback there. So that's big. They had some less than advantageous field position starts because of BC going forward on fourth and not converting, and then some mediocre punts. So, it was good to see that. Obviously, they get that turnover, which could have been huge, didn't end up really meaning anything. But ultimately, they didn't do enough to get the job done. You saw guys out there playing really hard, like Don Ezrako, obviously, again, didn't get a sack, but had some pressures, had some really good plays. Cam Horsley, especially towards the end of the game, had some incredible plays. He had the play where he blew up the screen where he tipped the ball up. Had another play where he basically just clotheslined the running back while he was getting blocked, which was awesome. Joe Marinero basically got the start at linebacker with Owen McGowan and Cam Arnold out, and I was very surprised at that. And honestly, he played, I would say, better than Sione Hala, and maybe Sione Hala had some more difficult assignments, but that was nice that he was not a complete liability. But even if you just watch the game back, you see so many times SMU ran those. They're basically jet sweeps, but they're called rocket passes, which are just like where you kind of volleyball tap the snap from the quarterback to the receiver who's running in a jet motion. And they ran those so many times. It's like, okay, yeah, they're doing that because they know that their guys are just faster than BC's because they can get to the edge and BC won't be able to do anything about it. And they ran those kind of plays all game. The first SMU's first touchdown where they ran that RPO where they have Jennings, scramble out to the left, and then when Kari Johnson gets too aggressive and tries to come up and make the tackle, they flick it out to the slot receiver on the perimeter, and he makes a man miss and a touchdown. And again, when BC is, even if BC was fully healthy in the secondary, I think they would have had some problems because again, this wide receiver group and Brashard Smith, the running back, are so athletic and fast. Where it's like there are not many defenses in college football, period, that can match outside of the best teams, in the SEC and the Big Ten. Your Georgias, your Ohio States, like those teams are going to have some success, but the rest of college football is going to have a really tough time defending this offense because of again how fast and athletic they are.
right. And the only way that you could really slow them down is by twisting their ankles, apparently, according to allegedly according to SMU head coach Brett Lashley, who was screaming and yelling all game long, and then after the game called, what do you say, bad football? BC's
Bad
playing
ball.
bad
Yep.
ball. So the allegation he's making is that every time they tackled, I think it was Kevin Jennings, that BC was trying to twist his ankle to slow him down.
Gator roll.
So pretty serious allegations for a coach to say that after a game, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was watching the defensive film tonight, and I wasn't necessarily. I kind of forgot about that. Then I thought about it again, and I was trying to look for it. I didn't see it as much. I'll check for it again tonight, but I mean, yeah, there's no harm in making that. I mean, there's no real harm in making that allegation. Like, what's the worst that can happen to you as a coach? Is you can just throw another team under the bus, and there's no real ramifications of it. So it is what it is.
We'll have to ask Bill what his thoughts are about that later this week. All right, in a moment, Mitch and I are going to give our final thoughts from the game, including special teams and any other things that stood out on Saturday's loss. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you're watching Sunday Night Football and you were thinking about making a wager, maybe on the passing yards of Joe Burrows, and you didn't get in on time, you can get live action right away. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. And they update it constantly throughout the game. It changes play-by-play. The odds are so quick to change on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com right now to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I love going to sporting events, theater, concerts, you name it. If it gets me out of my house and away from my kids, I'm kidding. I love doing it. So when I go, I love to use Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You want to go to the latest concert, I think it was or show in Boston, they've got it covered. You want to go to the UNC BC game, I'm sure they get good seats there. So go over to Game Time. Use their all-in ticket pricing so that you don't get those crazy surprise fees at checkout that really, stretch your wallet. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create a code and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black, and I am joined by Mitchell Wolf of Eagle Insider. After you're done with this show, make your second listen, Locked On ACC, hosted by Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs. They'll be talking everything ACC on their show this week. I'm sure they'll have thoughts about this game and maybe some more thoughts on the Thomas Castellano situation. Go check them out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, Mitch, what other things stood out to you about this game? Any takeaways or things that you thought of while watching BC and SMU?
So one key to this game that I talked about was BC had to be able to run the ball very well to keep SMU's offense on the sideline, control the clock. They did that, and that was especially impressive because SMU going into this game, SMU had a top 5 run defense in basically every metric that you could find. However, in this game, BC ran for 180 yards, averaged 4.2 yards per carry, got 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 first downs via rushing. Pretty solid. If you look at SMU's game logs this year, this is the most yards that they've allowed on the ground in any game. This is the most yards per carry they've allowed in any game, most rushing first downs. It's also the lowest defensive rush success rate they've allowed this year. So their success rate in every game this year up until this one was at least 53.6%. In this game, their defensive rushing success rate was 40.5. And their defensive rushing EPA, the lowest before this game was negative 2.75. In this game, it was negative 3.43. So, it wasn't Syracuse the week before, but BC was able to find a lot of success running the ball. They still have some things to clean up, still have made some mistakes here and there. But 3 running backs played really well. You had Kai Robichaux had a great game. Jordan McDonald had a great game. Trayshawn Ward played pretty well aside from that drop. And even Grayson James added some stuff on the ground. So BC was able to still keep running the ball even after left tackle Jude Bowery ran out. Honestly, I would say they were even more diverse in their running in this game. They had some different plays, different concepts. They weren't so super reliant on 3 plays and concepts as they were against Syracuse, and they were able to maintain that success, and that was huge.
So I want to give you another one of my takeaways. I kind of jumped on it on Saturday, but I have to shout it out again because it's worth it. I want to shout out Liam Connor and his Aussie roll punt.
Yeah.
Went for 45 yards, I believe. And I know it's just a great moment. One of those moments I was watching on the couch and I was leapt off my couch when it went off his foot. I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to actually have a real punt here.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to shout him out too much because his first punt was awful. But
yeah, I mean, he's pulling triple duty. I mean, is he doing quadruple duty? Because he's doing punts, extra points, field goals, kickoffs. He's doing everything. So, and that's, again, I don't claim to be an expert on kicking and punting, but the fact that you have to practice all these things and be expected to be the starter in all of them, which are different types of kicks, and he was pretty solid in this game. That's very impressive, and that was good to see. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in on special teams too. I don't want to rag on the kid, but they really need to stop having Jonathan Montague on kick returns.
Yeah, I was going to get into that. Yeah, again, sometimes the personnel usage of this team is extremely baffling to me. And again, I don't feel bad ragging on a kid who's a true freshman, but I mean, I guess he must be doing stuff in practice that they really like, but man, the results are just not translating to the field in games because kickoffs are setting BC up in bad field position consistently. I don't really understand what he's adding as a receiver. He had the best play of his BC career this week because he deflected a pass that should have been frankly intercepted, but he got to the ball from behind the defender and knocked it away for an incompletion. That far and away, that's been the best, most impactful play he's made this season. But I mean, it's just been, I just don't understand. Like, I'm pretty sure Jaden Skeet is hurt. I saw him get up limping in the Louisville game. I don't know why Jerron Bradley didn't play at all in this game. We're seeing more Dino Tom. We're seeing some more. Okay, but I just don't understand that. Again, it must be playing really well in practice and doing what they want, but I just don't think the results are translating at this point. I think they need to try some different things. Other things that I liked, we talked about tight end. These tight ends have been awesome this year. Kamari Morales and Jeremiah Franklin. I think I mentioned Jeremiah Franklin's being unsung here in this game. Had a lot of key conversions, made some really tough catches. Morales had the touchdown. Yeah, I mean, those guys have been great. And unfortunately, I don't think they're necessarily good enough to, build the entire passing offense around, but they've been reliable targets and have been consistent chain movers this season. And that's huge.
And one other person I want to shout out to in our final takeaways is Reed Harris, who
hadn't really,
he hadn't, I wrote it in one of my columns this weekend. I don't think he had a catch for like 4 games in a row or something like that. And
and he was getting targets. They were just like really bad throws, or he just like wasn't getting like good opportunities to do it. I think he had to drop here and there, but yeah, I mean, it was great to see. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those the best throws of James were to Reed Harris on those inbreakers, and that's good to see. Like if you can unlock that part of the offense, that can open up some other things, and that's huge.
Got to use Bond a little bit more. I'd love to see Bond get a little bit more action. I think,
and we talked about this during the game,
yeah,
because now we can say the James Bond connection. That James, there, which we just realized during the game, which that's on us for not realizing that, folks. So we got to be better at our content brains if we turned on to that one.
I got to tell you, in the press box, the guy who I don't know his name for Boston College, who does all the announcing just to the press after each play, he always does catch by Bond, Lewis Bond, every time. Good. So he's I gotta find him and tell him.
He's rubbing his hands together for the next 2 games.
For you. All right. Anyways, Mitch, we'll wrap things up here. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter, and then check out my work on Eagle Insider. Obviously, we'll have the game rewatch for this game. Lot of clips from this week. BC had a ton of plays, honestly, on both sides of the ball. I've been clipping the offensive plays today, and there's a lot to look at, so that'll be cool to go through. And then on to UNC, and this is definitely going to be a big swing into how we feel about this season ending up. And I think it's definitely a winnable game for BC. And I think they'll have opportunities, but they got to go out and take it.
All right. And I'm AJ Black. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 and check out my work over at Eagle Insider. I'll be back again tomorrow to talk more. We'll look ahead to any, other things going on with hockey or basketball. We have it all here at Locked On Boston College. So thank you all who have made us your first listen every day. We really do appreciate each and every one of you. Hit that subscribe and like button if you enjoyed today's episode, because we do this 5 days a week. We're the only Boston College podcast that does this daily. From Mitch, this is AJ. We'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.